All right, let's call the meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Please silence all cell phones and let's call roll.
George McQuistion.
Here.
Jeff Struble. Betsy Brunstetter. Lisa Chronister. Here. Brian Fitzsimmons. Here. Matt Guillory. Long Nguyen. John Robison. David Yost. Here. You have a quorum.
Okay, terrific. Item 2, approval of minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes from last meeting? If there are no objections, then we will approve the minutes by unanimous consent. Items 3 and 4 are empty, so item 5, consent docket, 2620 South Harvey. Michael, do you want to brief us, or if there are any questions, comments, or motions at this point, we can hear them.
It's a pretty straightforward application, just a removal of Academy, and there are no real design guidelines for UD that apply to the demolition of this structure. We're recommending approval.
Terrific. Any motions?
Motion approval.
Okay, that's Chronister. A second? Okay, Long Nguyen seconds that. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the consent docket is approved. Item 6, cases for individual consideration, 828 Northwest 8th Street. Michael?
Yes, this item involves a new single-family residence at the corner of the southeast corner of Northwest 8th Street and Francis Avenue. You recently approved a certificate of approval for a demolition of the existing structure at that location. The twist on this one is that you have two options presented to you. Option A is the preferred option, and that involves a excavation of the pad that's there today and the construction of some retaining walls on the eastern and southern property lines. Option B is another option that would leave the grade essentially as is and build the first level as a quasi-basement level. We've reviewed this application per the applicable design guidelines for the project and found that there are no issues or considerations, and therefore we're recommending that the Commission approve this application for certificate of approval.
And as far as the staff is concerned, option A or option B, either one is fine.
Either one is fine. They both are consistent with the guidelines that apply in this district.
Okay, perfect. Did the applicant want to come forward and say anything? No? But the applicant is in favor of option A, correct? Okay. Any questions? Comments, motions?
I guess I do have a few questions just based on other things that are in the area in previous applications. A little bit of understanding of what the retaining walls are about. The site plan is not entirely clear as how the setback relates to neighboring buildings, which is usually required as well. And then descriptions or understanding of materials and window types and that sort of thing.
I'm Vincent Lee for 828 Northwest 8th. Regarding the retaining wall, the slope to get into the driveway would be too high for a car to actually pull in without bottoming out. So we're trying to figure out a way to most cost effectively be able to pull the car in from the side. And that was doing the retaining wall on one side of it and being able to pull in.
So option A is basically building a retaining wall around the property line.
On that side, yes.
Both sides.
There's a retaining wall on the other side?
The south property line and the east property line.
Are we talking about facing Francis?
I'm talking about at the property line, the height of the retaining wall relative to the neighbor.
Okay, the only retaining wall that I don't have the picture in front of me to really know what you're speaking about, but on the west side of the house, facing Francis, we're going to cut into that wall and create a retaining wall there so we can pull the car straight in right there. I'm not sure about a retaining wall on the other side. I'd have to ask the architect what she did.
It's labeled as, there's kind of a rough,
Oh, that retaining wall is actually there on the east side of it.
is it?
There's currently retaining wall on the east side.
Yes.
And what you would do is you would just bring that down farther. If you, and with option A, as you dug out, you would just continue that retaining wall on down.
I believe so.
Is that correct?
Yeah. The issue was just cost, really, being able to pull a car down or up a slope. We were trying to get it even, and it was whatever the architect had to do in order to get it even.
Okay.
Where are the, I'm sorry, just trying to find pictures. So the existing east retaining wall is in the,
Yeah, there's an existing retaining wall on the east side. I don't think we're doing anything with that at all.
how tall is that retaining wall currently?
To me, the east retaining wall did not, just trying to visually ballpark it, did not look as large as the retaining wall that are in these renderings, but the idea is that you would, it's not going to, I don't think it's even going to be visible from the neighbors to the east, because it's just going to go, the top is going to be at their grade, and it's just going to go down.
Right, and I'm seeing this photo here, and the existing retaining wall is in the neighborhood of 2 feet-ish. And so how much excavation, what I'm concerned about is less about the looks of the retaining wall, but and how it will be handled, basically having a cliff from one neighbor to the next, and would there be a need for guardrail or any other type of code issues? I'm talking building code, I'm talking zoning code.
We'd have to look into that. I think the house next door is set about 3 to 4 feet off that property line. We're actually looking at some plans for that house right now at this time, and they're aware of this project, and they've expressed no concerns about what's being done here.
Okay. And is this a home that you're looking to live in, or how is that?
Yeah, we're living it for a while. We own that house and the house behind it as well.
Okay.
We will sell it eventually.
And can you talk a little bit, do we have good examples of window systems, that sort of thing? Is it storefront, is it metal windows?
Yeah, it's storefront, metal windows with low-E glass.
Okay. Taking another look. I looked at this last week. And then we're talking stucco. Okay, and so the rear retaining wall will be in the neighborhood of 7 feet tall. Is that correct?
Rear retaining wall?
Well, the south retaining wall.
I don't even think there's a retaining wall on the south side of the house. There is? Yeah, there's just grass. Yeah, the only retaining wall that we're building is on the west side of the house.
We're talking option A.
Yes. All we're doing on the retaining wall is on the west side to be able to pull into the house from Francis.
That's not what's illustrated here.
This retaining wall? Oh, that right there? I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, I gotta ask the architect. I'm not exactly sure what that...
So that part of the house will be underground, or?
Can you call Kelly? Let's go with the retaining walls, please.
I think that's where I'm confused.
Yeah, truthfully, I'm not exactly sure what that retaining wall is right there. From my understanding, we're only blowing out for the car to pull into the garage and have 2 retaining walls on either side right there, so we don't have to level the land.
So you're actually talking about option B at that point? So I guess it is important that we understand which option we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, option A is the one that shows the retaining wall
Yeah.
location.
Truthfully, I'm not positive. Kayla will check with the architect really quickly about that.
Built your up, so it's like 4 feet and then 2 feet on the south side because of Francis. We'll sit right here. Yes, because the grade's down.
Okay, it'll be 4 feet, then 2 feet.
Yeah, so 6 feet.
Okay, I'm sorry, it'll be 6 feet tall. It'll be
Okay.
4 feet, and then they'll tear up 2 more feet to 6 feet.
So that will tie into, I know there's, let me find the photo again. The existing house on the south, is that in essence the same height as that retaining wall on the,
Yes.
and it's plain concrete, or the existing one is what, stone or stacked? Is it concrete? I forget.
It's concrete existing on the east side.
So, I just want to make sure I understand this. So, is it basically, so this existing one along the street here is 3 feet tall, and then it's illustrated as a wing wall, or is there further retaining wall coming south?
I don't think there's any further retaining wall. No, there's nothing.
Right, I was talking the transition between what's existing and what's there. Am I the only one who's confused by this?
Go ahead.
My name's Kayla, P.O. Box 892837, Oklahoma City.
Address you're talking about.
Oh, the address I'm talking about? 828 Northwest 8th.
Do we have a pointer or something?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so the question is, so you guys have your current house, we're talking about option A, you have your current house in back, right? Okay, with option A, you're going to dig down, and then you're going to put up a retaining wall on the south, so between the new house and the old house, okay? So, and that's going to stand up, 6 feet. And then, but if you turn around, so this is from the new house, it's 6 feet. If you turn around and look at it from the old house, you kind of have that, you have a small retaining wall and then a slope up to your older house, but the slope is not 6 feet, so you've got a big chunk of retaining wall sticking up, if you're driving north on Francis, passing by your old house, coming to your new house, you've got that kind of big triangle or that big part of retaining wall sticking out. And I think Brian is just wondering, that seems pretty visible, he'd want to know
Do
more about
something
it.
cool with it, like, add bamboo, or we could do like a wood fencing, just something, but because of that drop, that's why she added that.
Actually, I think at the highest point, it is 6 feet. I believe it is. At the highest point, when you go up the stairs, where it's going to be at grade, I believe that's 6 feet. I don't think it's going to step up at all.
I think the reason I'm as focused on this as I am is, it's not that I'm objecting to the retaining wall per se, but
Yep.
in every other application, we ask very specifically if it's certainly visible,
Yeah.
what is it, how is it?
Yeah. I'll make sure it's
Saying
not visible.
something
We can
that's
add it
full
in.
and all that sounds great, but it doesn't give us an actual
Yeah.
answer.
If you look at the highest point where the old house kind of in the corner where the garage is, that's going to be 6 feet or higher right there. And I believe that's the highest it's going to go.
Right.
Yeah. If you look at Francis, kind of to the right of the picture, where that retaining wall comes all the way up, the way it's angled up to the garage right there is 6 feet or higher, because that
Right.
garage is taller than
And so
7
is
feet.
the wall coming horizontally?
Yeah, so it goes up that way, and it's that high all the way
So you're
down.
following the slope,
Yeah,
you're not making the wall full height?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. It's illustrated differently.
Sorry. I understand what you mean now.
Okay.
Unless we can move that garage to come off on 8th Street.
And this is in line with the existing on Francis, right? The house to remain.
Yes.
And it's slightly stepped back, similar to how the current house is, or the recently demoed house.
Yes, it's actually a little further back than where it is currently.
And that'll be form boards, smooth form boards, or rough form boards, or...
For the wood, it's going to be smooth cedar, stained cedar. Is that what he's asking?
What wood were you talking about, Brian?
Just the retaining wall. So like standard forms or something.
Oh, I'm not sure. About that.
So we would modify. Okay, I think I've asked all my questions.
Do you have, so based on those answers, do you have concerns, or what's,
Oh, it's not my favorite thing.
is it just the kind of amount of visual real estate taken up by the retaining walls, or is there?
It's partly that. It seems strange to basically take a flat building, put it on a sloped site. The way of doing that is just cutting out terraforming, basically, to accommodate a flat plant, but it is what it is. There's nothing in the code that says we can't do that.
On option B, it was like paying for a walkout basement, so we were just working with the numbers. And walkout basements are not cheap.
So, I mean, that's, I think, what it all boils down to and the main focus, because we're basically creating a retaining wall for the sake of putting a house that should, in essence, go on a flat site, on a hilly site, so we're making a flat site out of a hilly site. And it is the charm of that area, at least, is houses and stuff responding to the site. This is modifying the site to fit the house. But
I'll tell you how I looked at it, and it can be right or wrong, but I looked at it like I was looking at it making the owner pay for excavation.
I understand.
And that's how I was thinking. I'd rather not do that if possible, and this seemed within the realm of acceptability. So I was saying if it is, then let's avoid making them pay for that. And not that that's what everybody has to think, but that's just how I was
Right.
coming at it.
But I think in some reality, which may be something you guys look at, is the reality of digging out that much site and building that much retaining wall is probably not much different than building a walkout basement.
We actually had a meeting with the builder today, and the difference between the options was a little over $20,000, which would put it out of reach for us.
The staff recommendation was that you could approve the application to give them the ability to construct either option A or B if you found both of them acceptable. And when they come in for their certificate of approval, they would just submit the plans for either A or B. So they would not build one and build the other. But if you want to approve only A or only B, you have the ability to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think, there's a challenge with what we're looking at is this would be the first time that we've been asked to give a certificate of approval for two different ideas.
In other design review committees, we often have a proposal with an alternate, so that if bids don't come in, that they have the ability to construct the alternate. So that would be equivalent to what they're asking for this application.
David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've got a lot of experience around this, houses, residential stuff. What's your take on all this? Why don't you put your...
Yeah, of course, I'm not an architect. I think it's an excellent design and very pleasing, very compatible with other contemporary designs. Obviously, Brian's highly focused on that area and would see nuances I wouldn't. The staff had no problem with it, apparently. If there's no other significant discussion about it, I think I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. And David, was that for option B or for either, or how
Option A is really on what's on the table, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Option A or either, or option A or option B.
Yeah, that's the motion.
Okay, to approve option A.
A.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that's a Yost Chronister motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay, that's Brian. Okay, then the motion carries and the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brian, just so you know, I lost my home in a tornado, so I'm going to be living here until my home is rebuilt. That's what we're doing. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, no other business communications, administrative approval reports. Michael?
Yes, we have a pretty busy month here. You can see there's 8 administrative approvals here and a variety of signs and some additions that are under the threshold of the 20% in the urban design district, and some minor storefront changes and canopy removal. It's pretty much routine stuff.
I just wanted to ask a question, just out of curiosity, just to know how your mental process went. On the A1 607 Northwest 7th, they're changing a wall on their west elevation, rather large wall, from vertical standing seam to stucco, as I recall. How did you think about that? Was it a non-issue, or was there a potential issue of that much uninterrupted stucco along the western elevation of that building?
Well, they had to get special approval to use the metal to begin with. I went back through the reports on that as well. But there's nothing in the guidelines that says that there's supposed to be a certain percentage of stucco or other materials or anything like that. So that really wasn't a significant issue from the standpoint of compliance with the design guidelines.
Okay. And the other question I had, and again, this may just be me, but the item for 605 Northwest 6th Street, there were a lot of moving parts there, a lot of things going on, and evidently and obviously it came below your 20% hurdle, but how are you thinking about that versus...
Well, in Cottage, the threshold is a little different. It's anything under 20,000 square feet. And we've been routinely bringing you the houses that are in that area and the demolitions because we know that the commission has expressed a concern about those. In this case, they're not demolishing the accessory structure, they're retaining it and refurbishing it from a residential fourplex to an office use. And because the threshold is 20,000 square feet, we felt it was appropriate to put it in as administrative.
Okay. It's 20,000 square feet because it's DTD1.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm a little, and that's obviously, that's fine, and I'm all for let's try to get these people processed and through. If they've got stuff that conforms to the code, let's not be a hindrance. At the same time, I'm a little bit,
We had some of the same concerns, but at the end of the day, it came under the threshold, and we felt it was appropriate, especially since they're trying to rehab and restore the building as opposed to tearing it down and starting over.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. So B1, comments from the Planning Department staff?
Yes, we have a new appointment to the commission. His name is Matt Guillory. He was appointed at the last City Council meeting on the 16th of July. He will be with us at the next meeting in August.
Okay, excellent.
I know Matt, he's a good guy.
Okay. Terrific. Very good. Okay, and maybe that was C, comments from commission members. Any other comments?
Oh, if I could step back to comments from staff, I have something
Sure.
to tell you all about. We are continuing to work with Bill Bleakley, who's kind of stepped forward to help organize residents in the Cottage District to work with us on some changes to potential changes in the ordinance. And we followed up with him after a conversation in the workshop that we had about what things work in the code as of now, what things don't work, what things we could explore making changes to. And Bill's volunteered to put together a survey for all the residents in the Cottage District to take, because sometimes it's difficult to get everybody together to come to meetings. So he felt like this was a good way to reach out and get everybody's opinion. So he met with us and had a list of questions to ask that were related to design issues and maybe some approaches that could be taken to modify them. And I'm not quite sure what his timeline is on getting that ready and issuing it, but I was very, very grateful for him for thinking of that and for offering to consolidate comments and bring them back to the table so that we could meet and further discuss it.
And he mentioned to me in passing that which is kind of a rare thing for Bill Bleakley, but it's that this process has been very eye-opening and enjoyable to him. So.
Wow, okay, excellent. And, well, that's good to hear. Any other comments along those lines? I have a question to ask if of the staff. So I know that at the last DDRC there was a case before the DDRC, the northwest corner of 9th and Chartel Mode Development. I think Rod Baker spoke. A long time ago in some iteration, or somebody was mentioning, I think a staff member, maybe this was a couple years ago here, that might be a development that was on both the north side of 9th and the south side of 9th. And I was just wondering, is that, at least as far as we know now, that's probably not going to happen? It's just going to be on the north side of 9th, or do we have any insider? Can anyone shed some light on that?
I don't think that it's spanned across for that proposal. I can double-check that, but
No, it didn't. It was definitely north of 9th, but before
Well,
there were the 2 parcels that
right.
were going to be done.
right. I don't know what the future plans are for that site,
Okay.
but
But as right now, no one's...
right now I haven't seen any or heard
Okay.
anything like that.
Okay, perfect, great. Okay, well, thank you.
I just wanted to add, part of the reason I was as focused as I was on that is, there was, at least for that application, there was not a lot of information compared to other applications for which were required a lot of information. And I was just wondering about, seeking a consistency. If this application is adequate, then that's fine, but seeking a level of consistency and the amount of information.
I think that's a fair comment, and I think that if Betsy had been here, we would have wanted to see samples of a lot of this stuff. And I think that maybe sometimes I am torn between more information and trying to facilitate development if I think it's, if I think it's there. So I think it's a great point. And speaking for myself, I'm not sure I'm getting the balance right all the time. Anyone else? Anyone else want to comment or respond to Brian's comment?
Well, other than, I think that balance is hard to achieve sometimes when an applicant comes in that may not be as thorough with their drawings if they haven't had an engineer or somebody prepare a lot of their site plans. I'm assuming you're talking about some of the site plans that wasn't very clear with how the grading would be done. And I don't think that they were working with a civil engineer and putting that together. So they were depending on some of those axonometric things, but it didn't show where the retaining wall met up with the existing grade on the adjacent property. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. Those are some things I think when we're reviewing the application that we could ask the applicant to clarify, at least so they could come prepared to answer those questions. It's hard to anticipate what the commission might want to know that we've assumed, it complies with the ordinance. So, we try to be very consistent with getting the right level of detail for you to make your decisions. And, we definitely will go back and ask an applicant to bring in more materials. These materials are kind of some standard ones I think you all have seen before and can recognize based on the manufacturer's description of that. That's why we didn't ask this applicant to provide samples to you today. But we struggle with that as well for each applicant, their capability, the time frame that they have. So we apologize if you didn't get, the quality, that we don't receive the same consistent quality from application to application either, and it takes a lot of work sometimes to get them there.
Right. At least in relating to concrete, it is written in the code that concrete may be approved given that it's and it's by our discretion, but given that it's of a certain quality and form and all of that, which is part of why I asked that. We're, hopeful that it's at least not just thrown up with dirty Ellison forms and all of that. So that's one thing. They obviously had an architect involved, and they will ultimately need an engineer to provide foundations. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I think that the guideline discussing the concrete talks about the building. The material may be used on a building, so we didn't seek any further description about the retaining wall material or the forms that would be used for the retaining wall. But that's definitely a design consideration. It can make a big impact if you had a lot of retaining wall to look at. So I think that was a fair question to ask.
Yeah, there's about 150 linear feet of retaining wall on this.
Well, do you guys remember offhand the house that Hans is doing on Classen and, is it Classen and is it 8th maybe?
Yeah, but that's not in our jurisdiction.
No, it's not our jurisdiction, but I'm wondering what the DDRC had to say, because there's a huge stretch of retaining wall along Classen, and I didn't know because I thought it was an analogous point about the retaining wall.
That's actually the dirty Ellison form you're talking about.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah. So your point's a good one. It's a valid point, and particularly regarding the concrete, maybe we need to either modify the motion to make sure I I know that there's one house on the south side of 7th where we modified the motion to say it had to be smooth stucco, for example. And if we can do similar things with concrete if it comes up in the future.
Right, and obviously I have no objection to concrete for the sake of concrete, but
As long as it's
concrete can show up in many different forms.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Next meeting date, you can read that there in item D. If there are no objections, we will consider ourselves adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you.